in his busy schedule, getting ready for another practice today. And we'll just take questions in the chat and get started. So if you have any questions, we'll get going. We'll start with Chris Solari from the Detroit Free Press.
Well, I guess the big things, it's been a while since we've talked to you. How has the last few months been, first to implement what you want to do defensively, and then from a physical standpoint to get that translation going from mind to body?
Yeah, the staff really did a good job trying to come up with a plan to get guys moving around when we were on Zoom calls and stuff like that. And the guys bought into it too, which was a cool thing. I think we've all been in the Zoom world for so long, you get tired of just talking on it, so we tried to get the guys up and, they can put down 5 socks and watch them tape from the end zone and see your key and move and do some of those things, or walk through defenses the best we could, and really work the communication. I mean, that was the biggest part that we thought we needed to get. So at least they might not know how to do what they were trying to do, but they knew what they were going to talk about when they got out on the field. Hey, if we see this, we got to say this, and you get the communication piece through, and that helped the transition when we actually got to start going. The wonderful thing for us was those first 4 days of the first fall camp. For us to get some of that stuff on tape and just start working through those things really helped us coming into the second one.
Next question is from Matt Wenzel with M Live.
Hey, Scotty. Last time we talked to you in March, I believe you'd said, based on, you just thought you guys would be more 4 down based on what they've recruited to in the past. I'm wondering if that's still your thought and just kind of what you're thinking overall scheme-wise heading into more practice, obviously.
Sure. I mean, we're trying to install as much as we can. I think it's a fine balance there. We have great minds, all over the place on this, and everybody's running a different scheme, and we're trying to take the best from each defense and kind of put it in, but we got to be able to make it work together. So we're going to figure that out. That's the first thing we started with was 4 down, because that was our personnel, and we're going to see how we move, or who can play D tackle, who's big enough to move inside, who's a good enough guy to stand up and do some dropping and stuff like that. So we're figuring that piece out as we continue to go, and the start was good for us, and then we broke, but to come back, we're still implementing our defense right now. So what that'll look like, it'll be dependent on how the guys learn on the way through there.
Thank you.
Next question is from Stephen Brooks with 24/7 Sports.
Hey, Scotty, thanks for doing this. I guess sort of dovetailing right off that, how difficult was it, because normally you'd come into camp and spring ball and all that with a plan, but when you haven't had these guys and you haven't had them in pads even formulating the idea to start the day and know, can we try this or that? How difficult has that process been with the lack of general time that you guys have had?
The good news is like Coach Tucker was around during the lockout years in the NFL. And so he did a good job kind of preparing us. Hey, let's go through and say we have 4 weeks, say we have 3 weeks, say we have 8 weeks, say we have, a normal. So, for us as coaches, we like to dive into the X's and O's and do all those kind of things. But we spent a lot more of our summertime just really working different plans. Like, what if we do get this? What if we do get this? What if we do? So when we got to the point where they said, hey, you guys can go, well, we just pulled out that plan and started working that plan, because it was it was ready and prepared. And so, that helped us really get our minds right. And then it's kind of, we think we can do this plan, but when we actually start to get to it, now we're a few days into camp, really starting over with again the pad. So we kind of went back to page 1 again to try to reinstall it. But as we move forward, it's going to see how the guys really play in pads when it's real ball, not in pajamas and stuff like that, and see how far we can progress. Because when you start to see guys start to slow down, well, then we know, okay, that's probably good right there. We need to go back and redo it again, and that's kind of what we're doing now that we got pads on.
If I could follow up on that real quick, you said what you think the guys can do. What is that? Where do those clues or crumbs come from? Is it just last year's film, and I guess like you said, those 4 days of the first camp, and how valuable were those really when you do have such a short window?
Sure, those were really good because we got some stuff on tape, so we're not watching what other people do. We're watching the mistakes that our guys made, and then we can pinpoint those and work those things and those techniques when you're coming back to practice again. You have the chance to work those fundamentals, the ones we messed up the first time. As the other thing you talked about, the clues, it's when it's really the clues come like we talked about. Communication's huge on defense in all football, right? And when you start to put the guys on the field and the offense does something and it's quiet, okay, there's a clue, or if you get a guy or two that, I'm supposed to say something, okay, that's another clue, or you get a guy that you see generally he's set up and he can cover some ground and he can go. Well, now he's kind of, okay, those are all clues. Once the guys start playing slow or they're not as loud, the communication's not, all those are things that say, okay, we have to kind of take a step back, wait, let us catch up to what we're installed. Okay, now go on to the next thing.
Thank you.
Sure.
Next question is from Matt Charbonneau with the Detroit News.
Hey, Scottie, thanks for doing this.
Sure.
My question is kind of more like when you're looking at Michigan State from afar, you haven't been part of the program. If you have a kind of an idea of what their defense is like, maybe you have some ideas of what some guys can bring. And then once you've been able to get out there a little bit, start getting on the field and practicing, has there been anything that stood out to you, whether it's something general, individual guys that have stood out where you're like, wow, I didn't realize we had this with this guy or a guy, and this is a lot better than I thought. Anything like that early on?
Sure. I mean, I think when you go to someplace new, there's always there's anxiety for us, first of all, as coaches, just to see how the guys are going to be. And one great thing about coming here is, we always, as an outsider, we watch ball too. We kind of know what everybody does. And Michigan State's always been great on defense, and for me, that's one of the things that drew me even to come up here and talk to these guys is to kind of see why. Hey, what makes it so special? Well, when we got here and we started working with the guys, even through Zoom, I'm not going to say the whole group. There's still some young guys, but as a group, we're more mature than a lot of the teams that we've been around in the past. The teams that you go into and you start to talk through this. Okay, they understand concepts, they understand the basics, they understand the universal things. On this down and distance in this situation, this is what teams do. They understand those things, which makes it a lot easier to coach them, and they can connect the dots, even though you're changing some defensive scheme stuff on them, where they can say, okay, that makes sense because I understand what the offense is trying to do. So this is what we're trying. So it's been really good there. They're also, as an overall, I mean, we have some great leaders out there. You got to get like Antoine Simmons running around on the field. He's a different cat when he starts talking and when he's there, or Xavier, one of those, those guys bring great leadership and they can bring, the quality of your practice up. And the third thing I'll say about these guys, they work hard, man. They've been trained for a long time. They just do. There's times we try to fluster them. There's times we try to, work them even harder than it's going to be in a game. And they keep grinding through it. And it's a wonderful thing to have, because that doesn't happen everywhere.
Next question is from Jason Lewis with ABC 12 in Flint.
Hey, Scottie, thanks for joining us today. Obviously, you would have wanted to get out there and get things going like normal, have spring ball, have the full thing. But with everything that has gone on, how beneficial has it to get the extra time before the season? Obviously, they're not in pads, but whether it's putting an install, getting to know the guys because this is a new coaching staff.
Sure, that's been really good for us. Getting to know the guys. I mean, about the connections is a lot of what it is. Because the guys got to trust you and what they say. The extra little bit of time during fall camps has been really beneficial, and our strength coaches have done a good job because really when they first showed up, we were very concerned with just the lack of time to get these guys in shape. That was the biggest thing. I mean, we started going out on the practice field and we were cutting reps and making some things walk through and we couldn't even have a normal practice at that point, and when they shut it down for a little while, since we were all on campus and we could work together finally, our strength guys did a great job at least starting to turn that corner. Your football shape's a hard thing to do anyway, and we saw it for the first time yesterday, really, when you're actually hitting and it's pads, and it's different than running around without pads on. But the guys were gassed yesterday. But if we would have tried that, a few months ago when we were supposed to start, it would have been a really hard thing to do. It would have been like a couple reps. Okay, let's take a break. Couple reps, and at least we got through a whole 2-hour practice yesterday. It was fun.
One more follow-up real fast. One of the younger guys that you have redshirted last year, Michael Fletcher, what have you seen from him and what has impressed you about what he brings to the field?
You know what? He's a really smart young man. I can tell you that. He does work hard. He's a guy that runs the ball and he strives to win and learn and do all those things. His length is wonderful as a coach. You love those guys that are long like that and they can lean and do all those things. As for, when he was going through the stuff in the pajamas, everybody can kind of look good there. I know his pad level's a little high and we got to keep working on that. As we get into these padded days, I mean, that'll tell the time and see how good he can get off the ball, what we can use him in, see what his length does, all those things. Because it's kind of hard, especially up front. You can see some guys run around with the back end, but it's hard to totally evaluate that guy. But we're excited about it.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Next question is from Audrey Dahlgren with WLNS.
Thanks for doing this. I just got a pajama reference that you keep using. I just want to know, first of all, where did you come up with that, and why do you reference pajamas, as the shells and part before you put the pads on?
I don't know. That's one of those things that one of the coaches I used to work with used to say, and you pick up on it. I don't. It's one of those things that you call it for a while. It's it's not real ball. It's like it's like fake.
Right. So now that you've been able to actually, put the pads on and take the pajamas off, what was the initial day? You mentioned that you were impressed that they were able to get through the 2-hour practice where maybe they wouldn't have been able to. But what else impressed you initially, I guess, now that you actually put the pads on?
It was good to see just it starts up front. You see the D tackles, you got guys in there, young guys too, like Jalen Hunt and Deshaun, guys scrapping around that haven't got a lot of playing time before, and we're a physical offense, and those guys are pounding against them, and they're, holding line of scrimmage and fighting and trying to use their technique. And that's one of those maturity things that we talk about. Generally, the first day you put on the pads, everything that you've learned up to this point just gets thrown out the window. Seriously, I mean, guys go back to whatever they could do. And those guys up front held the line of scrimmage for the most part. I mean, you could tell at the end of the practice, so there started to be some oozing, where you'd start to lose that just because we were getting tired. But they did a good job competing up front, and then to see the backers actually have a chance to see a guy like Chase Klein or Simmons or Noah Harvey or some come back and actually hit a guy and thud him and stop him. Those are things that you like to see because you don't know. You're playing tag. It's like flag football. And to see guys be able to front guys up and put faces on them and stop contact, it starts to give you a feel of your personality. Hey, why has Michigan State always been good against the run? Well, because we got good, big, tough guys that can fall back, make tackles, do things, they stop people. And that was wonderful to see.
Mm-hmm. And then if I just follow up real quick. So did it seem like it wasn't as chaotic, I guess, maybe in a sense? Did you feel like there was some organization there too as well?
Sure. I mean, the guys that had a chance to go through it and learn it a little bit, which is what you hope. And if we would have done this the first time, first day in pads, new scheme, don't really know that would have caused issues. But now that we've had a little bit of time to practice, start, stop, then start again, and then go into pad, it helped the guys, at least for the first day, be a little bit cleaner than a lot of places.
Thank you.
Sure.
Next question is from Joe Dandrin with the State News.
Hey, how's it going, Coach? Appreciate you doing this. So, I mean, what have you seen? I mean, the front seven last year, I mean, you lose Raekwon Williams, Kenny Willekes, Mike Ponishuk. What have you seen from some of the guys like Naquan Jones, some of the other guys who might step up this year? Naquan Jones, Drew Beasley, Noah Harvey is a guy who's replacing Joe Bocci, too, that Mike spot. So what have you seen from some of those guys early on? I know it hasn't really been that long, but just thus far.
You see guys like Naquan Jones or Jacob Slade or some of those guys, you know what I mean? Yeah, they were on tape last year too. They used to rotate it. The cool thing about defensive line is, sure, you lose a bunch of starters, but there's a lot of guys with a lot of game experience in there. You know what I mean? If you go back and watch, Drew Beasley's played football in the Big Ten, and to see him continue to go, Jack Camper's another guy that, hey, he's played a little bit. He needs to keep going, but he's doing pretty good. We got Kuba back, which is great, and everyone knows what he is. But the inside guy's pounding through. Naquan's tough. He can continue to battle inside, and he's got a little bit of juice to him. Jacob Slade's a super strong guy, can hold the point. You know what I mean? It gives you the physicalness that you wanted. Is what you're looking at as the next guys behind him. The guys like Maverick Hansen, or Jay, because those are your first team guys who are moving up. Sure, they're always hard to replace 3 guys that go to the NFL. That's tough duty, right? But you hope that the guys behind them got enough playing experience that they're ready to step up. It's the next group, and Maverick's shown some flashes of strength and power and all those things. And who's on the up climb right now is Jalen Hunt. He's doing some things and showing some flashes that you say, hey, this is the reason I'm sure that they recruited him before. the kid could turn into a really good player.
Next question is from Adam Rittenberg with ESPN.
Hey, Scottie, thank you for taking the time. I just wondered how you manage your expectations and the players' expectations in this process, and obviously when you get into games after everything that you guys have been through and all the unusual parts of this lead up to the season.
Sure. I think that you put it in the process. I mean, the easy part is when you look at it that way, you say, listen, it's about the process. Hey, we have to learn what we're doing, right? And then we have to learn how to do it. And if we can learn those things in each defense as we continue on, we're not going to move on until we get some of that down and we can do things efficiently. And it might be a deal where, yes, there's things you're not going to be able to install this year. There's things you'd like to work to, or there's things, if you had a bye week, you might say, let's save that for – all that stuff's not going to happen. So as we temper it, we say, listen, we're going to play as hard as we can every snap, and that's going to eliminate a lot of the mistakes that you happen. Because even when you watch games now, there's some sloppiness out there, and I'm not going to say we're going to be immune to that. I'm just going to say we're going to try to limit that as much as we can by, hey, listen, everybody, let's learn what we need to do and keep those guys who are in your bubble and be safe. Let's try to train everybody, as many guys as we can. I mean, you might be, they just asked about the front, depth and stuff. Well, we might be down to, guy number 5, 8, 9 or whatever, depending on what happens with the COVID as it goes, or any injuries or whatever. So we're trying to keep it as clean and teach the guys, hey, this is what we do. This is how we do it. Okay, now you can get to the process of seeing keys on offense and try to simplify it as much as you can and keep them connected to the process. The results will handle themselves, and everybody's in the same boat as we were. Everybody had a chance to start. Everyone stopped. Okay, great. That stuff doesn't matter to us. We're going in there every day just saying, what can I get better at? What do I need to learn? How can I get better fundamentally? And how much more can I run to try to work my effort to get the ball? I don't know if I answered that question because, it's hard to say what expectations are. We're just, we're going to put our nose to the grindstone and go,
Next question is from Jim Comparoni with Spartan Magazine.
Thanks, Ben. I appreciate you putting me on there. I didn't realize that I was up next. Hey, Coach, thanks a lot for the time. Hey, you mentioned some personnel development in that defensive line. Can you talk a little bit about maybe in the back seven, if there are people that have stepped up and impressed you in that area? I know you haven't had a lot of time, but you're probably getting some observations. If you could share those with us, please.
Sure. Dom Long's playing pretty good. A guy that I'm really impressed with is Gerv. Kalen Gervin. He's a guy that's outside playing corner, doing some really good things. He's got really good feet, can stay over the top. Julian Barnett has come. We're excited about. He makes progress every single day. Davion is a guy that you can see it too, and Chris. All those corners. Harlan's been doing a great job with those guys, just making them better and better and better. And we still got Shaq. So there's some guys outside. I know that you lose a draft pick, you lose some of those guys, but hey, there's some guys that are developing it, and we're trying to figure out what the best mix of DBs are. And you'll see us sometimes too. If you practice, guys are playing different positions just to learn different things, and we're trying to learn their skill set. Now it's for real because you want to be able to say, hey, if we're going to play a third corner, who would that be, and who's the most physical guy to play inside? If we're going to play a guy at safety, as you go through, everybody knows about X, but Trey, how much can you put him in the box? He's a little bit light, he's got really good range, but he's doing a good job. Or a Michael Dow or Emmanuel, all those guys are in the mix, and we're just trying to find the right formula for them all. And they've been mixing around positions too. We're trying to find the right slot. Now that we have pads on, and you're banging around a little bit and you're getting around big guys and you're doing all that. It's good to see those guys because I think the slots become clear. You might have an idea, hey, this guy's really a corner. This guy's going to be a really good safety doing these things. This guy's, can be a box player a little bit more. How do we fit our pieces? And now that we got the pads on, it's starting to clear up a little bit. And those are guys that we think are pretty good. They've shown some athleticism and we're excited about seeing them continue to grow.
Hey, also, I know coaches always have a vision of what they want their players to look like in terms of adding weight or taking weight off. How much progress do you think you've made with individuals to get there? I saw some defensive ends that dropped a few pounds. I've seen some defensive tackles that have added some. Was that part of the vision, and how close are you in
Sure.
those? How much progress?
We're getting closer with a lot of those guys. There's still a few guys. You always have those guys who have trouble gaining weight just because they're young and their metabolism is going like crazy. But it's getting close. Strength staff does a great job. We meet with them every, seems like all the time. But to sit down with them and we go through each and every guy and say, hey, here's where we are, and then they check in with us and keep us updated, and we try to stay there, whether it's getting with a nutritionist or extra meal, whatever we got to do. But they've been working that way. It's been a little bit hectic this year, to tell you the truth, because of all the COVID stuff. I mean, there's times where these guys weren't even here, and we had no way to get them food or provide them. You know what I mean? There's just that was kind of hard. So to get those guys back onto where we want them to be, we're working on that still. It's a work in progress, but it's getting closer to what we're looking for.
You like the Jalen Hunt that he's put on that weight just before we move on? Jalen Hunt, the guy that
he's going to be a good one, man. He's going to be a good one. He's going to be able to make some plays.
All right, thank you.
Of course.
All right, we have time for a few more. We've been going for about 20 minutes, so we'll keep Coach just for a little bit longer. We'll go to Jared Ramsey with Impact Sports.
Hello, Coach. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. So I just have a follow-up question about Julian Barnett. You talked about how he's been improving every day through fall camp so far. In his first offseason as a dedicated defensive player, what were the steps that he had to take to improve from last season where he played on both offense and defense?
I think it's getting back to being a full-time defensive guy, and being able to say, and that position, when you're on the edge, there's a lot of times you're Gilligan out there. You know what I mean? You're on that island and you're all alone, and to really sit down and be able to go through and learn the techniques. They got a great one with Harlan Barnett coaching them over there, and saying, hey, here's your footwork, here's what you need to do, here's your mentality, here's the things that people are going to try to do and do that, and that's what you like to see. He started off and thought a little bit, hey, I'm a really good athlete, because he is. He's a really physical, strong kid for what he is. His feet are good. He can run. He can do all those things. He's got a lot of things that you like to see. But just to put those into use in the off season, it's hard when you're not able to work with the guys. So for him, he's trying to learn what we're trying to do via video. And when you're a lot of times, if you're a defensive tackle or a corner, well, sure, okay, I got that guy, man. Okay, whatever. It's hard to physically do that and learn the technique in there. And now that we're together with them and we can work with them, those are the guys, the defensive tackles and the corners are the guys that really need technique, because they're the smallest thing they do wrong can be a big problem for you. And those are the guys that we're excited to see, because, hey, you step on the field, I'm raw. I'm going to go out there and just ball. Well, now the technique's starting to come around. He's doing better and better. So that's where we're excited to see him continue to grow.
Thanks, Coach.
Sure.
Time for a couple more. Next we'll go to Lindsey Huddleston.
Thank you, Coach. Earlier in your comments, you talked about maturity, and we know there's huge value in that. But unfortunately, in the blink of an eye, these guys are going to transition. What advice do you have to all the guys getting ready to play Friday night, the high school players who have the desire to play at a Michigan State or on that level? What advice do you have that can make them almost better prepared once they get to campus?
A lot of it is a couple things. First of all, especially at that level, you got to take care of your grades first. I mean, that's the number one thing at every level, but make sure that they take care of their grades so they have the availability to go there. The second thing that I think gets missed a lot is, guys our level, and we've been trying to preach it too, is your body. Your body is your business. Your body is what gets you an opportunity at, in the NFL or get to go to college or whatever the case is. And I don't know that young people are mature enough to understand, hey, my role in my ice bath, my nutrition, what I put into my body, what I do with my body, the sleep I get, all those little things, they add up to whether you got a guy who's two guys working equally as hard, and one day's making better gains than the other. Well, why is that? It's not because they're doing anything think that, okay, well, let's look at their outside. This guy's not sleeping. He's doing the wrong thing off the field. He's not putting the right nutrients in his body. He's running to McDonald's instead of, getting some, grilling some chicken or whatever. All those little things, they matter. And this guy generally, if he's ice bathing and taking care of his body and doing all those things, he's able to stay on the field, which means he can learn and improve more. The first rule of getting better is to show up. If this guy gets nicked up because he's not taking care of his body, he can't show up. He can't get better. So, those are the things that, for us, we're really trying to preach to our young guys too. We have to learn how to do that so that we can stay on the field and we can get the technique and we can get better.
Great. Thank you.
Sure.
Last two questions. We'll start with Chris Solari and then Matt Wenzel will wrap it up. Chris?
I know that Mel had talked when he was hired about potentially using more 3-4, staying with 4-3, I guess. How much does that get maybe altered a little bit with the short time frame? And as kind of a follow with that, where are you at middle linebacker? That's obviously a spot where you need to find someone. And is that an adjustment and juggling guys around to see who fits there?
Sure. There's some of that. There's no doubt. Chase is running around. Noah's doing some pretty good. You got some guys that are there, and then the young guys just mixing them through. To see if we can see how they pick it up. The 3-4-4-3 thing. There's some common things in both schemes, and as long as it's a deal where you can align here and play this coverage. You might be rolling your coverage or whatever, right? And then you can also take those same dudes and move them over a little bit. It just changes the gaps, makes it a little bit different front. You can run the same coverage. So a little bit of that is, as we work through it, how do you work the front and the coverage together? What can you do out of each? And that's not as complicated as it may seem sometimes, but it's definitely hard when you get into the finite points going down the road into these. And that's what, you might be a little bit more vanilla as you move forward rather than, all the different things that you see out of each package. That's the hard part about the time.
We'll wrap it up with Matt Wenzel with MLive.
Scottie, you briefly touched on Jacob Panasuk. How important, what kind of difference does that make to have him opt back into play this fall, given he's the only returning starter you got up front and by far your most experienced end?
Yeah, I know this. I mean, it's better coaches when he came back, right? I mean, that's what you want, right? A guy who can rush the passer and do some things and provide a little leadership and just the amount of plays and the experience he's got that just made us better by him coming back. He's a great dude, man. He's a guy that he has a want to get better and a want to be really good. So when you work with him, he's fun to work with because he's always searching for, you talk about those guys and say, hey, coach me, coach, right? Well, he's one of those guys. Hey, give him this nugget. And you can be hard on him and you can keep giving him more because he has the same expectations. And is what it does is when you get guys like him or Drew Beasley, some of those guys is what they do is they up the level of want to and intensity in the room. And when they see, young guys see that, hey, this is where this guy, he wants to be coached all the time, then they understand that that's acceptable. They don't get down on themselves. They don't get their feelings hurt. They start to see that too. And they're like, yeah. So it's great to have a guy who has experience back, first of all, and a guy that you can coach and he provides an example of how to take coaching for everybody else. That's a leadership thing you miss sometimes.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right, Coach. Well, we know you got practice to get ready for, so we really appreciate your time and joining everybody today.
Of course. Thanks, all. Have a good one.
Thanks, Scottie.
Thanks, Scottie. Have a good one.
Thank you.